Once upon a time, in the vibrant village of Umoy, there lived a woman whose beauty was beyond compare. Her name was Isam. When men saw her, they forgot their own names. Her skin was as smooth as fresh palm oil, her eyes sparkled like the morning dew, and her smile could melt even the coldest heart. Men whispered about her beauty, and women envied her charm. Whenever she walked through the marketplace, traders forgot their prices, men dropped whatever they were holding, and even the birds in the trees seemed to pause and watch. An old woman once sighed and murmured, "Such beauty is dangerous." But Isam was not just beautiful, she was wise. She knew the power she held over men and used it carefully. "No touching before marriage," she always said. Every man who pursued her heard the same rule. They respected her for it, praising her virtue. But Isam had a secret. A secret she had carried all her life. If a man ever touched her, if a man ever saw what lay hidden between her thighs, he would never be the same again. She laughed, she smiled, she let them admire her from a distance but never too close. That was how she lived until Emma, a handsome young man, entered her life. Emma was kind and hardworking, with a heart as pure as fresh palm wine. From the moment he saw Isam at the village festival, he was enchanted. His heart pounded, his legs felt weak. "This one," he told himself, "this is the woman I will marry." He pursued her with patience, bringing her fine gifts, beautiful fabrics, sweet palm wine, and the freshest meat from the hunt. He sang her praises and whispered sweet words. "Isam, you are the light of my world." She smiled. She laughed. But as always, she kept her distance. "No touching before marriage," she reminded him. Emma did not mind. "You are a good woman," he said, his heart swelling with love. "I will wait." For months, they courted. The village watched. The village gossiped. "Finally, our Isam will marry," they whispered. One bright afternoon, Emma and his family came to Isam's father's house. He knelt before her and said, "Marry me, Isam. Be the mother of my children." Isam smiled. She liked Emma, he was gentle, and he made her laugh. But deep inside, fear gripped her heart. Still, she said, "Yes, I will marry you." The village erupted in celebration. Drummers played, women danced, children ran through the streets shouting, "Isam the beautiful is getting married." Even the elders agreed they had never seen such a feast. But the real night had yet to come. When the celebration ended and the last candle burned low, Isam and Emma were finally alone. The room was quiet, except for the sound of crickets outside. Emma took her hands and whispered, "My love, do not be afraid. You are mine now." Isam's heart pounded. She had always known this moment would come. Her hands trembled as she stepped back. "Emma, maybe we should rest first." "We are tired," she said, her voice unsteady. Emma chuckled. "Sleep. My wife, do not be shy. I have waited for this night. I will love you gently." Isam swallowed hard. There was no escape. Hesitant and shaking, she finally removed her clothes. The moment Emma's eyes fell upon what lay between her thighs, he let out a loud, piercing scream. In the blink of an eye, his world went dark. "Oh! My eyes! My eyes!" he cried, clutching his face. He staggered backward, his hands shaking, his mouth open in horror. Isam froze. "What is it? What is wrong?" she cried. But Emma did not answer. He could not hear her. He could not see her. His world had turned black. His screams shattered the night silence. The village awoke. People ran to the house, elders, women, even children. "What happened? What is wrong with him?" they asked. Emma wailed and pointed in Isam's direction, his body trembling. but he could not see her anymore. The elders whispered among themselves. The villagers exchanged wary glances. But no one could explain what had happened. By morning, Isam packed her things and left the village. And no one ever saw her again. Once upon a time in the village of Umoy, there was a woman so beautiful that men forgot their own names when they saw her. Her name was Isam. Her skin was smooth like fresh palm oil, her eyes sparkled like morning dew, and her smile could melt the heart of even the angriest man. Men whispered about her beauty, and women envied her charm. Whenever she walked through the market, traders forgot their prices, men dropped whatever they were holding, and even the birds in the trees seemed to pause and watch. One old woman sighed and shook her head. "This kind of beauty is dangerous," she murmured. But Isam was not just beautiful, she was wise. She knew the power she had over men and how to keep them at a distance. "No touching before marriage," she always said. Every man she met had the same rule. They saw this as a sign of dignity and praised her virtue. But Isam knew the truth: this was not about dignity. It was about her secret, a secret she had carried all her life. If a man ever touched her, if he ever saw what was between her thighs, he would never be the same again. So, she smiled, she laughed, and she let them admire her from afar. But she never let any man get too close. That was how she lived until Emma, a handsome young man, came into her life. Emma was kind, hardworking, and pure of heart. From the moment he saw her at the village stream, he was lost. His heartbeat quickened, his legs felt weak. "This one," he told himself, "this is the woman I will marry." And so, he pursued her. He brought her gifts: fine wrappers, sweet palm wine, and fresh bushmeat. He sang her praises, whispering sweet words. "Isam, you are the light of my world." And Isam. She smiled, she laughed, but she did not let him get too close. "No touching before marriage," she reminded him. Emma did not mind. "You are a good woman," he said. "I will wait." For months, they courted. The village watched. The village gossiped. Finally, Emma proposed, and Isam accepted. The village rejoiced. Drummers played, women danced, and children ran around shouting, "Isam the Beautiful is getting married." The wedding was grand, one of the finest the village had ever seen. But the real night had not yet come. When the celebration ended and the last candle burned low, Isam and Emma were alone. The room was quiet, save for the sound of crickets outside. Emma held her hands and whispered, "My love, don't be afraid. You are mine now." Isam's heart pounded. She had known this moment would come. Her hands trembled as she stepped back. "Emma, maybe we should sleep first." "We are tired," she said, her voice shaking. Emma laughed. "Sleep. My wife, don't be shy. I have waited for this night. I will love you gently." Isam swallowed hard. There was no escape. Hesitant and shaking, she finally pulled off her clothes. The moment Emma set his eyes on what lay between her thighs, he let out a loud scream. Then, in the blink of an eye, he went blind. "Oh! My eyes! My eyes!" Emma's voice rang through the night. He clutched his face and staggered back. Isam froze. "What is it? What is wrong?" she cried. But Emma could not hear her. His world had turned black. His screams woke the entire village. People ran into the house: elders, women, even children. "What happened? What is wrong with him?" they asked. But Emma only wailed. He pointed at Isam, shaking, his mouth open in horror. But he could not see her anymore. The elders whispered among themselves. The villagers looked at Isam with suspicion. But nobody could explain what had happened. The next morning, Isam packed her things and left. She did not cry. She did not explain. She just left, leaving Emma behind, his eyes forever dark, his future forever changed. Her secret was still safe. But fate was not done with her yet. Not long after Emma's mysterious blindness, whispers about Isam filled the village like harmattan dust. Some said she was cursed. Others said Emma had fallen sick from an unknown disease. But no one knew the truth. Then, a few months later, Isam met another man. His name was Ed. He was nothing like Emma. He was richer, stronger, and more powerful. His father was a great chief, and his mother came from a long line of wealthy traders. Ed himself had businesses in many towns. He had horses, farms, and enough gold to make even the king jealous. When he first saw Isam, his heart skipped a beat. "Who is that woman?" he asked his friend at the market. "That is Isam," the friend replied. "The most beautiful woman in Umoy. But be careful, my brother. There is a mystery about her." Ed laughed. "What mystery?" "A woman this beautiful cannot be dangerous. I will marry her." And so, he pursued her. He sent gifts to her house, clothes from faraway lands, beads that sparkled like stars, and bags of rice big enough to feed a whole family for a year. But Isam, as always, smiled sweetly and said, "No touching before marriage." Ed admired this about her. A woman of virtue, he thought. This is the kind of wife I need. Before long, he asked for her hand in marriage. The wedding was even grander than Emma's. Drummers played until their hands ached. Dancers moved their bodies until sweat covered their skin. People came from far and wide to witness the marriage of Ed, the rich, and Isam, the beautiful. Even the king sent his messengers with gifts. But when the sun went down and the guests went home, the real night began. In their grand home, Ed pulled her close and whispered, "My wife, my love, this night belongs to us. Don't be afraid." Isam's hands grew cold. Her heart beat like the village drum. She tried to move away, but Ed only laughed and kissed her forehead. "Are you shy? Don't worry, you are mine now." Isam took a deep breath. There was no escape. Slowly, she removed her clothes. At first, Ed froze. His eyes widened. His chest rose and fell as he took in the sight before him. Then, just as Ed's eyes fell upon her secret, his mouth opened to scream, but no sound came out. His voice was gone. Instantly. His face twisted in horror. He clutched his throat. His lips moved, but nothing came. He tried again, nothing. His voice was gone. Panic filled his eyes. He turned to Isam, pointing, trying to speak, but no words came. His whole body shook. Then, he grabbed his ears, a loud ringing sound, sharp and endless, then silence. Ed could not hear. He could not speak. Fear gripped him like a spirit had entered his body. He stumbled backward, hitting a wooden stool. He ran to the door, pushing it open, rushing into the night. Nobody believed her. That night, Obina's family took him to many herbalists. They made sacrifices, they prayed, they begged the gods, but his voice never returned. His hearing never came back. The next morning, Isam packed her things and left. She did not cry. She did not explain. She simply walked away. Her secret was still hidden, but the villagers were talking now. This was no longer a coincidence. This was a curse. And fate was not done with her yet. By now, Isam's name carried whispers wherever she went. People spoke in hushed tones when they saw her pass. 2 men, one blind, one mute and deaf, yet no one could prove anything. Some said it was bad luck. Others swore it was the work of spirits. But no one dared to speak to her directly. Then came Obaina. Obaina was not just rich, he was the richest man in all of Umoji. His father owned lands. His mother owned markets. And Obaina himself had enough money to buy anything or anyone he wanted. Women in the village dreamed of becoming his wife. Mothers prayed for him to choose their daughters. But Obaina wanted only one woman. When he saw Isam, his heart jumped like a frog in hot water. "This is the woman I have been waiting for," he declared to his friends. "No one else compares." His friends hesitated. One of them scratched his head and said, "Obaina, have you not heard? Emma went blind. Ed cannot speak or hear. They both married Isam." Obaina laughed, a deep, rich laugh that shook his belly. "So because two weak men lost their senses, I should be afraid? Do you think I am like them? I am Obaina. I have money. I have power. Nothing can happen to me." And just like that, he went after Isam. He showered her with gift boxes of gold, the finest clothes from across the rivers, slaves to serve her. He built her a house before she had even said yes. And when he finally asked, Isam agreed. The whole village gathered for the wedding. It was bigger than any wedding before it. Goats were slaughtered. Palm wine flowed like river water. Musicians played until their fingers bled. "This time, it will be different," the villagers whispered. "Obaina is not like the others.